Alrighty, back from lunch. I hope everyone's lunch was as delicious, satisfying, fun, stimulating, and invigorating as mine was. By the way, this is not, there's no error here. This is just recording to the camera here, so I'm actually not being amplified. It's okay. Peter's sneaking in. So here's what we're gonna do, guys. We're gonna head off into our spin on SEO and content marketing. Then a little bit of paid, take a quick, super fast coffee break, and then we get a last hour where we just hit you with growth hacks after growth hacks after growth hacks, where we just inundate you, drown you, smash the dikes, and let the growth hacks floodwaters drown you. And then around 5:30, I believe we're gonna even get some beers involved, which is always a good thing, right? I like it. Good energy. Yes. All right. So let's jump right in. I'm going to just lead this real quick, and then Casey will take it away from me. So we think a lot about, again, as I said, how to turn emails into dollars. It's a lot of the thinking that drives us, whether we do B2B lead generation or whether we do sort of B2C like paleo hacks. And as you've heard me say, paid stuff gets harder every day and more expensive, and you're limited on volume and upside potential. One sort of set of arbitrage methods around that is building content, right? Building content that then attracts, building sort of honeypots that then attracts the right flies, so to speak, that you can then harvest over and over and over, right? And we have some interesting hacks around how to build content cheaply and make it scalable. But before we get there, one thing, again, I want to hit you guys over the head with is that when you think about SEO, what you really should think about is not search engine optimization. You should think about it this way. How do you help a platform's technology, how do you help another platform's algorithms find your stuff? That's it. And that's SEO. Done. Done, okay? Of course, Google's algorithms are very sophisticated, okay? So this is why we're not going to go into a rat hole where we talk about Google and then we go deeper and deeper and deeper, and then we're here for 3 weeks and nobody knows what to do next, okay? SEO is sort of this dark art / science. That's not the subject. I want you guys to get some high-level takeaways. SEO is all about how you get how you help existing algorithms find your content. So, Amazon. You thought Amazon was a bookstore? You thought it was a grocery store? No, it's a search engine, okay? People put queries in it and expect a result, and the higher you are on the result page, the better off you are, okay? So very simple. And the upside of any other platform other than Google or Bing is that generally speaking, the algorithms that govern this sort of these SEO type results, generally speaking, are much easier manipulated than Google is, okay? Not saying it's trivial. Amazon's quite sophisticated, but anyway, you can see here for customer development, out of 47,000 results, the book that Brent Cooper and I published in July 29, 2010 ranks number 1, right? That's a good thing. A hack around this, by the way, if anyone's publishing stuff on Amazon, a product or a book, a kind of good hack you can do is this too, by the way. Let's say you have a product, let's say you have let's say you search custom development, and I want to make sure my book's number 1, and it's not number 1, or I want to increase the ranking of my book. What you can do is put a search term in that you want people to find you with, click through till you find your item, okay? And then retain the URL that's presented to you by Amazon. So it'll be like amazon.com, x5555 / and it'll have a string. That string tells Amazon how you got there. And so then if you're promoting your product or your product or your book, send that string out, not the canonical. Everyone follow what I just said? Any questions? Who did not follow? It's okay if you didn't follow. Okay. So I have this book here. This book has its own landing page on Amazon, my book here, okay? And that URL is probably amazon.com / something in the string, okay? Every product has a listings page. And one of the things that Amazon keeps track of is how people get to that page, and that's recorded in the URL. right? And so if you send the URL, let's say I was ranking 5th for customer development, and I was promoting this to a list, I would send the URL that returns after I've found my way to my book. Do you see what I'm saying? So each click tells the Amazon servers, oh, someone was looking for customer development and they found that book. Okay? A lot of the book hackers are doing stuff like this. Another platform is effectively a search engine, SlideShare. This can be used very well. This is still sort of open for exploitation, I think. I don't think all the growth hackers have attacked it as aggressively as it might be attacked. Here's Casey's post. Casey's got a SlideShare here. So he's got 146 slides, 129 likes. It ranks number 1 for growth hacking out of 17,000 possible results. Again, there's tons of content you can do that's specific to what you guys are working on. Another one, so this is at growthhackers.com. Simple community site. Yeah, question. So how do you bump into number 1 in SlideShare? It probably would work that way in SlideShare. I don't know. I haven't done that yet. But one of the things you can do is once you get SlideShare, what happens is once you post your content, promote your content to your list, get them to upvote, like, etc. Then SlideShare often then goes, oh, this is the most voted SlideShare of today, and so they start pushing it along their channels. Then you push that again with your list, and then often you get a lot of people seeing your content. They do actually a pretty nifty way because they're like, hey, like they appeal to you. They're like, hey, like your growth hacking SlideShare is doing awesome. Like we've just given it, it's just hit the most liked growth hacking SlideShare today. Why don't you promote it? And you're like, of course I'm going to promote it. It's so great. Growthhacker.com, this is on a simple community site. A lot of these sites, there's so many different versions of these community sites out there. They're all sort of a wiki/forum/Reddit type approach. They're all pretty simple to hack. They don't have typically sophisticated like IP monitoring. Sometimes they do, but it's typically not that sophisticated, right? So you can upvote stuff. You can get your friends to upvote stuff. Doesn't work on like Hacker News. It doesn't work. They have actually sophisticated math and technology that prevents you doing. But a lot of the other ones do. Everyone else is manipulating these. So should you. Eventbrite can also be thought of as a search engine. And here we're showing we actually sold 5 tickets. Sold 5 tickets just on search in Eventbrite. Right? So not like our assumption is that people are going to sign up for these sites through either Meetup, through people emailing their list, right? Apparently 5 people actually searched for growth hacking in Europe and came across our stuff and bought. That's kind of nifty. Right. That was London? Okay, that was just London. Yelp, again, we think about this, think about sort of how do you help Yelp's algorithms find your stuff if you're working on this. So I'll turn it over to Casey, and he'll talk about how to clean up your house. I think you're good. Yep.
Cool. Nice. So first, I wanted to, or I'll grab my water. A couple things. One is, obviously, it was great to see everybody talking. I think a reason why Patrick and I share what we've done is because people will show these stories online, but you don't really know how well they work. And so I think it was great to see everybody talking, and especially hopefully between Belgium and the Netherlands, and talking to other people doing interesting things in the growth community, and figuring out what worked and also what didn't work for them, and how you can kind of apply those learnings. And also, people kept stopping me and asking me, like, which social triggers are the most important? And I think it depends on the product, but I think the big wins, because these, if you focus on these, they definitely work. But the big wins are when you kind of layer them on top of each other. When you layer like scarcity on top of liking, on top of reciprocity, that's how you can get the huge list. It's kind of also the same concept behind the full stack marketing approach. So back to SEO and content. Does anybody here think making content, creating content, valuable content is easy? No, it's often a pain in the ass. Everybody's like, oh, what am I going to write? What am I going to create? And so a place I often focus on is I call cleaning up the house. So I have a 1-year-old, so aside from buying, unbelievable amounts of diapers, I keep buying all these children books. So I decided to pull cat in the hat. I'm sure most of you are quite familiar with it. So anyways, start with like cleaning up your house. And I also like to start there with SEO because there's so many external factors. There's how many links you have to your site, how many links you have to certain pages. There's the age of the domain and whatnot. But I like to focus on what we control. Is anybody in here an SEO, by the way, or make their money from being an SEO? Okay, cool, a couple of these people. So definitely feel free to chime in, tell me what your thoughts on are different things and what's worked for you. So again, I'm gonna focus on things you control, things you can go and edit your site immediately, and where I've seen lifts, consistent lifts over and over. And so, on page. So here's a screenshot from Google Webmaster Tools. Any of you use Google Webmaster Tools? And any of you use Google Analytics? Yeah, so pretty much everybody uses analytics. A handful of people use Webmaster Tools, and most people find it hard to get any actionable insight from there. And that's the thing too with the data. It's like, well, I have all this data, but what the hell is it telling me? Like, can I even do anything with it? So I was working with this startup, and they had some pretty good traffic, some pretty good organic traffic. They got some, some pretty good signups, but we really wanted to kind of take it to the next level. And we knew with SEO we weren't going to get the crazy hockey stick growth, but we could level up. We could, increase both our rankings, therefore our traffic, therefore our signups. Or so that was the goal. So we started creating some content, and we're like, oh, we want to rank for X, Y, and Z. But going from, going from like 0 to then ranking is much harder than taking a keyword or search query that you already rank for and moving it up just a couple spots. And so this is actually from a different site, but I picked this just to show a good example. So again, this site was getting insane traffic, like 5.5 million visits a month. Just from SEO. And so we started looking at click-through rate. And oftentimes, like, you can go into Google Webmaster Tools, you can even log in there right now, and sort by click-through rate. So here, we're like, okay, we're getting impressions for these keywords, but nobody's clicking on this. So for instance, this query, we rank 8. You can see the positions you rank for certain queries. We rank 8, but only 0.5% of the people are clicking on it. So again, back to the conversion rate optimization example, like that's quite low. And when we look if, here in this example, you rank number 2, we were getting 26% of the clicks. We rank number 3, we're getting almost 7% of the clicks. So, if we can go from 8 to 3, in theory, we can get 15x return on just on that query alone. Whoops. So we started, we took these queries, we looked at, what we were kind of ranking for, what we were getting impressions with, and tried to see, where could we move up. And so we plug them into Google Keyword Planner, which I highly recommend. And so that just gives you a good idea on the volume. And so, for instance, with Superpowered and Patrick, there's some very, niche keywords you're trying to rank for that don't get a ton of volume, but the people that are searching for that, have like extreme pain that his product can solve, and he's also in the B2B space, so he doesn't necessarily need to target, like crazy volume. But I always, after looking at the queries where we're kind of already ranking for, I always go to the keyword planner to kind of prioritize the keywords we're going to go for. Where can we get the biggest lifts? Also, I don't have a screenshot here, but also correlating this in Google Analytics to see which keywords or which landing pages are driving conversions. So that's another problem too, is I'm sure many of you log into your Google Analytics and you're like, well, I don't even know what I rank for because 90% of the queries are all from not provided. And you're like, oh my God, this is the worst. So something I often do there to try to, get as much data as I can is you can look at your landing pages from organic traffic, and that can kind of give you an idea of the search queries that are taking people to your site. So I took this data. I was like, okay, what are the search queries? What are the landing pages? Where we're ranking? What kind of volume are we getting? And then use that to kind of prioritize the landing pages that I wanted to further optimize. And so what I did here is for each page, I just took one query. It's kind of like each email that we send out, you know, we have like one ask. So I took each page and I was like, okay, what is the one query we want to focus on specifically for that? And I'm going to optimize it from there. And it's like the most unsexy thing ever, but you know, we spent like months creating content and trying to distribute it, et cetera, and we couldn't get a lift in organic traffic. We couldn't rank for these. So like, okay, why don't we just fix what we have that's already kind of broken? You know, the low-hanging fruit. It took me like a day to do this. And all I did is I focused on a handful of on-page tactics. The title, the header, the content, making sure you mention it in the content. I'm not talking, you know, like, you know, 1996 SEO where you write the keyword like 3,000 times in the footer and it's in white so nobody can see it. You know, that obviously doesn't work anymore. That's called keyword stuffing. But, you know, including these keywords in your content, you know, putting it in your alt text, which is the text that you show Google to that they attribute to an image. You can do similarly with video. The URL, I didn't always change the URL because we were getting links otherwise. You can change the URL and put the keyword in there and, you know, do like a 301 redirect or something like that, but I kept them, I did not change them in this example. And then internal linking, you know, signaling to Google that it's important and that it's about a specific keyword and linking it within the content. It also helps with, I think, a better user experience as well. So anyway, so I took these like 70 pages. I went through like these 6 factors. I took some additional keywords which Google can provide also if you search for like a certain query at the bottom, let's say related terms. And so I just changed these. Again, this isn't going to guarantee that you're going to start ranking, but it's setting yourself up for success. It's, these are signals to Google, and it's kind of like Patrick's graph at the beginning. Like, worst case, I lost 8 hours of a day. Best case, you know, we got a great lift. And so in this column, you can see the initial rankings. And this is like a month later. And just by changing these factors, our rankings increased across the board. Every single query we were trying to rank for, we jumped up. But that's not the goal. Oftentimes, SEO agencies will sell you some like BS package, like rank #1 for this, this, and this. But like if it doesn't, you know, translate into traffic, which is what we got, and then if it doesn't translate into signups, which is what our you know, KPI, the metric that we're focusing on mostly, it doesn't matter. So here you can see, and again, it's not the crazy hockey stick lift, but it's trying to compound these different marketing channels. And so here, we made the change. This is actually just a couple months ago, and we got a 50% jump in traffic. Just by changing these, writing no new content, because that's the biggest thing too, is you're always like, oh my gosh, I have to write like another blog post. What the heck am I going to write about? How am I going to distribute it? How am I going to rank for it? And then here, I guess it's kind of blocked over here. But we got a 50% bump in signups. And it's not exponential growth, but it allowed us to level up again, you know, getting from like 1,000 signups a month to like 1,800 signups a month. And in the B2B space, you know, that's a great lift. And also a reason why so many people focus on SEO, which I'm sure you can attest to, if you can get those rankings, in theory, it's kind of the gift that keeps on giving. So you put in all this upfront effort, and then you get it every single month. Question?
So signups are really interesting as a KPI for sure. What I kind of want to try to track is, you know, how does it translate into active users, retention, and all that. I'm having trouble with that in the first metrics.
Mm-hmm.
Tooling is not as good as it is SEO stuff. What's your experience with that?
Yeah, so what you can create is, you can create both events and goals. I don't know how your product functions exactly. If it's like a mobile app, that's like a whole nother conversation. But I completely agree, because you want to track it further down the customer life cycle. But you should be able to create events or goals that will trigger based on, you know, certain activation metrics, or if they put down their credit card and purchase, you can track all that in analytics. So I would set that up. And what I like with it too is this way you're able to, you know, more or less track the whole customer journey. And, you know, analytics and attribution, I think, are like the bane of a marketer's existence. It's always like such a pain in the ass. You're like, what do I attribute the success to? There's often multiple touch points. So that's another reason why I like analytics, is you're keeping, or Google Analytics, you're keeping everything in like the same platform. Any more questions on SEO? Perfect. So next is content. So anyways, to rehash there, just focusing on a handful of on-paging factors, you're just signals to Google what that page is about. Okay? No new content. But when it comes to content, whenever I think of SEO and creating content, aside from how am I going to distribute it, I often try to think of as what I like to call scalable SEO, or scalable content. I hate writing blog posts as much as the next guy. All you have to do is go to my site. It's like a splash page. So I try to think, how can I take data, how can I take information that's out there and, create 50 or 1,000 or 100,000 blog posts at one time that provide value to, our potential customer or potential reader. And so in this example, it's a site called Hire Live. They're a job fair and career fair company based over in the US. And they're getting some decent traffic here and there. They'd run like job fairs in, I want to say like 20 plus cities. But they really wanted to start, seeing what other markets could they expand into, and also start getting more traffic for each of their events. And so what we did was we just created like a template, again, focused on the on-page factors that we knew gave the greatest signal to Google, such as the header, the content. You can't see the URL in the title, but similarly. And then we created this template, and we were able to roll out events in every single major metropolitan area in the United States in one click. And so for some events, like Los Angeles or San Francisco, we had events so people could come and sign up for the event, but also we kind of wanted to use it as like customer development to see where should we potentially have events in the future. And so like, for instance, New York, I'm sure the result will be a bit different because we're in Amsterdam, but if you search in like the US for like New York Job Fair, it ranks like in the top 3. If you search for like where we have events like San Francisco or LA or Orange County Job Fair, we're always like ranking in the top 3. And again, there are other factors, but we took these on-page factors to set ourselves up for success. But again, in this case, we didn't want to write blog posts for every single metropolitan area in the United States, and so we were able to create this template and basically, by pushing one button, roll out 100 plus event pages that worked as like lead gen capture. And then you're like, okay, that's cool for an event, but what about my SaaS product? Well, Zapier, they did something very similar as well. And so they basically said, okay, there's, let's say 1,000 different, software solutions that people want to use for X, and they might want to integrate them with Y. And so, let's pair those up. Let's do, SEO at scale and create a bunch of pages. And so in like this case, they don't have necessarily an integration between Trello and Evernote, but they were able to pair these together, write the Evernote description, write the Trello description, and roll out, thousands of pages at once. Because, they might create like a Dropbox, like an iPhoto Dropbox integration, because they know so many people want to take a photo and automatically push it to Dropbox or something like that. But they don't know what other integrations they should make. Just like all of us in this room, they have developer resource constraints. So this way they were able to, get more long tail SEO, but they were also able to like use this data to make decisions on what should be their next integration. People come, they see that there's this integration, and then they can start pulling people into their funnel. Finotary, this is another example where we kind of did this SEO at scale. So does anybody think they have an unsexy product? No? Everybody has the next Tinder? Okay. I'm going to assume you're just being bashful. But oftentimes you have like, you know, an accounting app or a project management app or something like that, and you're like, God, nobody wants to talk about this. Nobody is going to share this on Twitter. Nobody's going to share this on Facebook. You're not like at a dinner party, you know, having cocktails, and you're like, oh my gosh, this accounting app is the coolest thing ever. Come check out this dashboard. It's the best. Or maybe you are, but it's probably a pretty boring party. Anyways, so. And also, a lot of times, people have this problem where they're trying to educate a market, which we hit here too. So there was no search volume. People weren't searching for what we were providing. So in this case, it was an electronic notary product, which was brand new to the US. Like, it did not exist. So you're like, okay, let's go to Google Keyword Planner, see if people are searching for it. There was no competition, so we could rank for it, but nobody was searching for it. It'd honestly be like a handful of search queries a month. And you can't grow organically off that. So we're like, okay, how can we tap into a bigger market? People want this. We're providing value for people. How can we get everybody? How can we educate these people and start onboarding them? And so, like, okay, and this is where I think there's a lot of opportunity in these kind of unsexy markets. We're like, okay, notaries by default. And if you guys know what notaries are? Okay. I don't think anybody here enjoys going to a notary. It's like going to like the dentist and the accountant at the same time. And so people were searching for notaries. They needed notaries, but they didn't know that there were these electronic notaries. And in the US at least, notary information is by default public. So we start looking around, and there was no place that kind of aggregated all this data. And so we're like, okay, why don't we create like a Yelp for notaries? And oftentimes when you're dealing with like governments or whatnot, there's a lot of like data that they have that's valuable that's kind of trapped somewhere. So in this case, it was honestly trapped all over the place. It'd be on somebody's CSV file on their local computer, or in like Miami or in Florida, for instance, we'd like fax them some information and like wire some money. It was like this, it took forever, and they like literally mailed us a CD-ROM of like 100,000 notaries, which was not available on the web. People wanted this information, but nobody was presenting it. So we took the data, and again, the data wasn't all perfect, but we tried to like parse it together as well as we could. And so then we could create, like with Florida, for instance, we could upload all this data at once and create 100,000 notary profiles, basically 100,000 blog posts at once. And again, this is providing value for people searching. People are looking for notaries in Jacksonville or Miami because they probably partied too hard and needed to get out of jail or something. You know, people wanted this information, but it wasn't available. And so, you know, very quickly we were able to create all of this potential long tail traffic. And not every single page was ranking, but you know, we didn't need to rank for all 100,000 people. If we could get like a chunk of that, you know, we'd be doing a lot better than the handful of people searching for electronic notaries. We're actually able to get it to, I think, 90 or 100,000 uniques after like a month and a half. And that was all from SEO. Another thing, which Patrick probably should talk about a bit later, but what we did is we put some of like our top keywords on the homepage as well. And so we kind of stole this term from a friend of ours who runs websites that get like billions of page views a month, but it's like sculpting PageRank. And so kind of taking, you know, a majority of most of our links, I would assume, are coming to your homepage. And also I think this provides a better user experience, and then linking to like our top pages or the pages we want to rank for from the homepage. So, you know, we could rank for Kansas Notary or Maryland Notary or something like that. And then another example of, you know, trying to find this public data and, you know, create a lot of content at once. This is for an application that it was in like, it's for HIPAA. And so if you're not familiar with that is, it basically protects your health data. And so this product was helping health applications talk to hospitals. And so they needed to use their product to connect with them, but it would keep your data secure. Again, HIPAA is about as boring as it gets. And so we start looking around and we're like, there's got to be some information out there that we can do at scale. Like nobody wants to share anything about the HIPAA space. We could, you know, spent a bunch of time creating a bunch of content, but we didn't know if it would rank or not. So again, we kind of want to do content at scale. And so we start looking around, and we found that there was a site that had over 1,000 case studies on HIPAA violations, which are the exact type of people we're looking for, people that actually care about HIPAA violations, which I'd be surprised if there's one of you in here that does. And so from that, we were able to get this CSV with all the information, again, this like Excel file that had like the name of the issue, where it happened, the date. They actually provided like blog posts for us. They had like a full-on description, like they ran through the entire case, and this was not available anywhere else on the web. So we took this data, this public Excel data. I went on ThemeForest. Does anybody here use ThemeForest? Perfect. Yeah, it's a great site. You can kind of go in there. They have great themes, especially if you don't want to pay like a designer or whatnot. Envato, I think Envato owns them, but Envato also has this marketplace where I think this theme cost me like $39, and Envato for like $50 they'll create the site for you, so like in less than a day, in less than $100, you have a professional looking site. And then we took this data, and there was like some free WordPress plugin where you could like mass upload posts, and just made sure that all the cells matched, and just pushed a button, uploaded the Excel file, and there's like 1,000 blog posts at once. So again, especially in these unsexy markets, and where there's not a lot of keyword volume, can you find some public data? Can you find, it's buried on somebody's computer and, some CSV file, and then present that in like a valuable, interesting way. So again, I think it was in London, somebody raised their hand and said, well, were you providing any value? We're just getting like some crappy SEO traffic. But people were looking for this information on these case studies. And like the notary example, people wanted to contact these notaries, and now we were allowing them to do so. And what we would do is, like on the notary site, we would just advertise or capture emails to educate people about the electronic notary product. In this case, we would capture emails. People are interested in like the HIPAA violations in the HIPAA Act, and start educating them, providing them value about about HIPAA, and then introduce our product.
How did you do that? You asked to sign up for a newsletter?
Yeah. So it was similar to my example before. So instead of like learn how to win in Scrabble and Words with Friends, it was we would give them something that they wanted in HIPAA, or get like a full database on all the notaries in a certain city, and yeah, we'd get their email address and then put them into like a drip campaign. Yeah, go for it.
I'm coming for this one, right?
Yeah.
So here's a content piece that we did. It's got some content elements as well as SEO. I'm going to walk you guys through this. This is a piece that we recently did. So this is Superpowered. It's the startup I'm working on.
Here's this if you want it.
Thanks. We're a very technical and weird startup. We provide an SDK, software development kit, for developers who are trying to do high quality, low latency audio on mobile devices. Okay? Who knows what I just said? Who understands what I just said? A few people. Okay, good. It's very niche, very technical, but we're solving some of these very hard problems at a very low level that translate into much better user experiences in things like VR and AR and other things. So we did this piece here. Again, I have the same constraints as most of you guys: budget, lack of developer resources, time, etc. But there is a problem that we do solve. We help solve it, and we can also provide value to our potential users, developers, by helping them educate people around them. Actually, so often some of these developers are locked up in huge corporations. They understand this problem, but they have trouble articulating the problem actually, and have trouble convincing people on their team to realize that it is a problem. So we can help do that. So one of the big things in Android that we help solve is Android has what's called a latency problem. Latency is simply the difference between when I input audio into a system and then audio comes out. Okay? So for example,
I'm going back
when I'm
up.
speaking to you right now, like the back of the room, you hear my voice 2 milliseconds after it leaves my mouth. There's some latency. It's not immediate.
Cool.
Human beings, as any musician will tell you, we can deal with latencies up to about 10 milliseconds. That's sort of, we don't notice anything around 10 milliseconds or faster. After 10 milliseconds, 30, 40, 50 milliseconds, interacting with something that has that much of a lag feels weird to us. Okay? Musicians understand this, especially professional musicians. DJs understand this. So if you're a DJ and you're DJing, and you're making, you're bending the sound, you're applying a filter, you need to hear it immediately, and the crowd has to hear it immediately. You can't like do something and it takes like a lag and then it happens then, right? Because you can't actually react to that. Turns out there's a very hard technical problem to solve. We solve it. So that's the background. So we did this long content piece where we said the Android's 10 millisecond problem, the Android audio path explainer, okay? One of the things we did, okay? And this, by the way, I'll just tell you right now, this thing went viral on Reddit. It blew up, it crashed our servers, like literally, we finished writing it, took about a week or two, did some other stuff. I put it on Reddit, I went to meet a friend of mine, get a beer. I was tired and grumpy. I went to bed. Next morning I woke up, my email inbox is like 400 emails in it, and our servers were down because we got too much traffic from Reddit. So one thing is really interesting. There's this problem around latency in Android, but no one actually gave this thing a name. And if you're an author like I am, if you're a writer, you understand there's great power in naming things, great power and great value, okay? So for example, in the Lean Startup, Eric Ries wrote about pivots and MVPs, right? Those things pre-existed Eric, but Eric understood that if he gave them a name, we could talk about them and we could think about them, right? So I decided to go, I'm gonna call Android's latency problem the Android 10 millisecond latency problem. Now I have now people can hold on to it. It has a handle, okay? There's power in naming things. Also, I wanted this to rank for Android audio path latency, so you can see that it's there, it's elsewhere as well, okay? There's actually a lot happening on this page. I don't even know where to begin. So, one big thing, this is actually very interesting. If you're building content that you hope that goes viral or be spread, some people even say virality is actually not even a good, it's not even a good device to explain what happens when content gets spread. Some people call it wildfire instead. Anyway, if you're building content that you think can go viral in your community, in your audience, one thing I would suggest all of you think about is learning how to write a hook. Okay? Any journalists in here? Any journalists? Any writers? Man, none. Okay. Any copywriters understand this? Journalists understand this? Knowing how to write a hook is what gets people to engage with the content and share the content. And it has sort of a formula, okay? And I'm gonna teach you part of it. What you wanna write is a man bites dog hook. Not dog bites man. Dog bites man is not news. Nobody fucking cares. Everybody knows you mess with a dog, it bites you. Why would you write about that? But the one time the guy bites the dog, well, we want to hear about that, okay? I just saw when I was perusing, Casey was speaking, I was on my iPhone, emailing with my wife, there's like an ad comes by, one of those content ads, it's like, this article, it's like, I was the only virgin on Tinder. Man bites dog, right? Like, why would a virgin be on Tinder, right? Doesn't make any sense, but I'm curious. I want to read it, and maybe I'll share it, okay? So, everyone follow me, by the way? These things work, by the way, in your brain. It goes right through your bullshit filter, right? Like, I know we have all these finely tuned bullshit filters. I know you guys are all too, none of this shit works on you, I know, just outside the door, right? This goes right through your brain. It works everywhere. So, like, one of my favorite business writers, Malcolm Gladwell, he writes amazing hooks, right? It's always a thing like, I know you thought that being tall and fast and being able to jump really high made you good at basketball. It turns out being small and being a midget and fast makes you awesome at basketball. And I have the data to prove it, right? Man bites dog, okay? So for this example, the hook was, it's actually true too, right? You can abuse this too. Like all the clickbait people like Upworthy and all this, they abuse it, right? They'll basically lie, right? But this is actually true. So I looked into the data of downloads, and my hook is pretty simple. Even though music apps make up only 3% of all downloads in the iOS App Store, the music app category is the third highest revenue-generating app category after games and social networking. And if you're in this space, this is actually pretty interesting, because it's thought to be that music apps don't monetize well. It's thought to be that they'll never monetize well. It's thought to be there's a very low willingness to pay on Android, especially for things like music. But what I'm suggesting very strongly is there's evidence out there that even though music apps only make 3% of all the downloads on iOS, people actually are willing to pay for high quality interactive music apps and games and things like that. And the reason you don't see it on Google Play is because the software is still high latency. And guess who's got software that solves high latency issues? This guy. We also did what's called a gifographic. This is just an infographic that's animated. And this one actually is very helpful because it actually shows you, it's not just a flashing lights, pay attention to me. It actually shows you the audio path through Android and where latency is added to the audio stream, right? So this is actually actual test data. We took a Google Nexus 9, we ran tests on it, and we actually saw, okay, well, you add a millisecond in the analog digital converter, the bus adds a millisecond, and the ALSA adds 5.3, audio flinger 5.3, and then it goes through the user app, then it goes up through audio track, the binder, audio flinger, back through the ALSA, and then it gets output. It turns out it's 35.8 milliseconds, which, again, as any professional musician will tell you, that's way too long for professional audio on a mobile device. Then we had a bunch of interesting information there. And the result is, I submitted it a few places. It blew up on Reddit. You can see we got 414 comments, 1,600 upvotes, and then all these people talking about this problem, which is what we wanted to do. This is a subreddit on Android, so it did really well. And again, I'm not saying I can make stuff go viral on command, because I certainly can't. I cannot. No one can. However, I can set the conditions so that we have some probability it happens. Make sense? Also, this was very helpful too, but this was shared internally at some very large companies who are struggling with this problem, which is what we want to do. They reached out and got in touch with us, right? They literally like, wow, we saw your very, very informative thing about audio latency. We've been working on this project for 2 years now. We learned 2 or 3 things. Let's have a conversation, right? So it helped generate leads and some business out of this, actually quite a bit. Back to Casey.
So just like Patrick said, setting the conditions for you to succeed. So that's why I started with like the on-page stuff with SEO. It's not guaranteed that you're going to rank really well for there, but you can set the conditions so that you will rank well, so that you will succeed. And so for instance, here's a tool called BuzzSumo. Does anybody here use BuzzSumo? Perfect. It's more than most of the other cities. So it's a great tool. And then again, this is a place to start when you're writing content to set yourself up for success. See what content are other people looking for. So I think aside from writing great content, a lot of us, myself included, we kind of hit these almost like pre-writer's block, or whatever you want to call it. We're like, okay. I don't even know what to write about, much less, I can't even write something. And so like in this case, like, okay, we want to write about programming languages, okay? We're targeting developers, and so we want to cover important information on programming languages, but there's so many directions I can go, I don't even know where to start. And so that's why, a tool like BuzzSumo works well, is because you can plug it in there. And in this case, it's the past month and it's all these different content types, but maybe you're like, okay, we want to do an infographic on, beers in Europe, or just beers in general. And you can plug it in there to see what people are spreading, what's, I guess, going viral. But, what are people sharing on Facebook? Or maybe you're just targeting business customers. What are people sharing on LinkedIn? I think it's actually one of the perks we give out. The product's actually more expensive than I thought it'd be, but I think you get like 4 months free or something. Anyways, I highly recommend checking it out. And so we start there, we plug it in there, and we're like, okay, most popular programming languages, list of programming languages. So obviously people want to know often a lot of times people just want to validate what they're doing, but like what are the most popular programming languages? What should I be studying? What's coming next? And so this was written by Larry Kim. I think he's actually a PPC guy. But anyways, he wrote this post, and I'm sure it's a great post, and I'm sure he has a lot of great insight. But it's like his opinion. So we dive in there, and it's his opinion on it. And a lot of what I focus on with content is how can we provide data that actually does provide value. And so it's like, okay, people care about what the most popular programming languages are, but how can I improve this? How can I take his post to the next level? Bless you. And so what we did, in this case with like Loggly, we scraped GitHub. And there was also a tool called, or a public site called GitHub Archive, where they're providing this data. And so like, okay, it's one thing that if I was like, oh, I know a little PHP and some HTML and my app's in Ruby, so of course those are the top programming languages. But that doesn't really provide any value. So like, okay, what are people actually using? And finding these public data sets and then taking this data, repurposing it in like an interesting way. And so like again with here, we created an infographic and discussed what are the most popular projects in these languages, which languages have the most projects, the most forked, etc. The stuff that these developers are looking for. This actually blew up on Reddit as well, because we saw, based on BuzzSumo, people are looking for this. We submitted it to Reddit. It got upvoted quite a bit. I think we got like 25 or 30,000 visitors like in a day and a half. And again, because we were trying to set the standards, or set ourselves up for success. Another example was the site Developer Reports, which I launched because I wanted to start getting developer emails and kind of create this website that developers could often go to get interesting data-driven information. But I'm not a developer. So how can I write on the topic? Again, so we went back to the data decision. We scraped GitHub. We looked at GitHub Archive. And we're like, okay, but these people don't necessarily want just another blog post. It's always another blog post. There's a reason why infographics are interesting, because it's telling the story in a different way, or slides, like SlideShare, or webinars. Again, it's content, it's just in a different format. And so we created this kind of interesting, I guess, sub-site where people could go down and, 1 hour on GitHub, there are, X created GIFs per hour, or GIFs per hour. And then, we have a timer, and it will show how many have happened since we went there, or since the person arrived. Forked repositories. Again, it's just taking this information that people want and showing it like in a creative way that provides value. And I often go with like a data-driven approach, because then oftentimes you can repeat that over and over, but it's also providing more value than just, there's like, I don't know, hundreds of thousands, millions of blog posts every single day, so why should people listen to you? Again, so with SEO and content, we'll actually get to SEMrush in the next spot, but that's a tool. Often you can kind of see what your competitors are ranking for. Maybe you can try to take over their rankings. But also BuzzSumo. What are people looking for in your industry? Also, what's interesting with BuzzSumo, and I don't have a screenshot of that, is you can see who are the influencers based on certain keywords. And so whenever I write a post, I always think, how am I going to distribute it? Like, am I going to target marketers? Okay, then I want to reach out to some people that are influential on growthhackers.com and have large, Twitter followings in the marketing space, and I'll have somebody that works there maybe submit it and have them share it. But so always trying to think of how are you going to distribute the content, and so BuzzSumo can actually help with that as well. Data sources, again, like how can you present interesting information in a unique way that provides value for the people? So like earlier I mentioned GitHub Archive, so it's public developer information. It's public historical GitHub information. There's a lot of other tools like BuiltWith, which we'll talk about a little bit later, but it shows which sites are using which products. And so maybe you can kind of repurpose that. Nerdy data is very similar. Maybe you scrape, like you want to show all the or like let's say you want to show all like the CrossFit gyms in Europe or in the Netherlands. You could scrape Yelp and kind of show it like in an interesting way. Like there's X CrossFit gyms in this neighborhood in Amsterdam and this neighborhood in Amsterdam. And then web scrapers. And so we have some screenshots later, but I'm not a programmer, so I can't just build like a web scraper out of nowhere. But there's a lot of very interesting tools out there, that you can get started with for free, like import.io and Kimono and Mozenda. I think Mozenda actually costs money, but you can go in there and you can kind of like teach these scrapers on how to provide you with the data. Has anybody used import.io or Kimono? Yeah.
One note, we're going to organize an event in end August with data scientists from import.io here in Amsterdam. How you will explain how to use internal and external data to grow.
Perfect. There we go. So yeah, who you guys have used import.io and pretty easy, right? Yeah. And yeah, there we go. And they work very quickly. I highly recommend them. Any questions on SEO or content before we jump into the paid section? Perfect. So paid marketing. So again, as Patrick mentioned before, whenever there's arbitrage opportunities to get a ton of growth, like with Facebook advertising, they had I don't know, 800 million users years ago, and so they had crazy reach, and they had this new paid channel, and so people were able to kind of like hack their way in there to get this crazy growth, like or organically even, like the Zyngas of the world. There were all those video apps that blew up, and then they had no retention, so they kind of just like fizzled out and died. But they got 25 million users seemingly overnight. But what paid search can do is, well, one, it can be used quite well for testing, but it can also drive growth. And I'm going to run through some examples how I've used it. And so one, do we have anybody that runs a nonprofit in here? Anybody else? Okay, cool. So this is Google Grants. Has anybody heard of Google Grants? There we go. Has anybody used Google Grants? Okay. Did it work well? Yeah, for certain keywords. Cool, so Google Grants is interesting. And so in both of these instances, these are local nonprofits in Southern California where I'm from. And I really wanted to help them. I really liked their mission and what they were trying to accomplish. And so I was like, hey, I'll help run your Google Grants. It was very easy for me to spin up and get going. And they weren't really getting the traffic that they needed. And so Google Grants has this thing that they'll give you $10,000 a month for free in spend. That's pretty awesome. I'll take $10,000 any day of the week. And on top of that, if you hit the $10,000 multiple months in a row, they actually bump it up to, I think, $30,000 or $40,000. It might be a little bit different for each country, but that's how it is in the United States. So in this top example, they do a lot of work with the rainforests in Costa Rica, and this isn't a brand new site. They'd had this site running for years, and they'd honestly get like 35 visitors a month. And so it just kind of shows the growth you can get with something like Google Grants. So we flipped the switch in April of 2013, and they were able to go from like basically 0 to like 6,000 visitors a month. Again, and the beauty of paid search is you can kind of flip the switch and immediately get traffic. And you can target very specific keywords. So like with SEO, you might be like, oh, we want to rank for this, and you put in all this work, and a couple months later, you're kind of hoping that you get there. With paid, specific search queries, and you can get that traffic immediately. Here's another example. This is, they helped with, like, I guess, poor use in Orange County and Los Angeles with just different educational resources. And they were getting some decent traffic. But again, Google Grants, flipped a switch, more than double their traffic immediately. And so, like, what is your nonprofit? Cool. Have you guys tried this? Okay, cool. Perfect. And so I'm not saying you should go out and like abuse Google Grants, of course, but there could be interesting ways. Like I don't know if there's, you know, if Startup Amsterdam might be a nonprofit, and you know Google Grants could possibly help that, and then you could use that to kind of feature the startups in the Amsterdam community. Here's another one. Again, this isn't like some mind-blowing paid growth hack, but it works. And most people I talk to, and I'm looking into their AdWords and their ad spend, it's just dynamic keyword insertion. Nobody bothers with this. I have no clue why. So the big problem is you're willing to spend more money, and you're willing to drive this traffic. You're willing to send your money to Google, and they're showing your ad, but nobody's clicking on it. And so you can do like keyword colon what your main header is going to be. But you can put in, but then again it will pull other keywords from your campaign. So are many people searching for simple online marketing? Maybe. And if they search for something else that are one of your keywords, they'll serve that. But what if somebody searches for good online marketing, professional online marketing? You know, you want to like hit that segment exactly. I search for X, and you show me X, I'm much more likely to click that than if you show me something that's somewhat, you know, related. And again, here, this is from the Costa Rican rainforest charity. And so just, you know, we're heading over to Europe, and so I want to like show some real data. And so I just log in there, and I sort it by click-through rate. And as you can see here, the top 4, so there's like 8.5% click-through rate. Goes all the way down to like 3.5%. The top 4, all dynamic keyword insertion. So again, I'm giving people exactly what they're searching for. Here's another one. So I talked about this a little bit before, but it's, yeah, question. I'm sorry, say that again?
It might be that your headline might be better, but people are searching like a small abbreviation or something. It shows in your...
For a smaller abbreviation. Right, but then it will still show your ad, but for a portion, for you know, a segment of those people, you're going to serve something much more specific. Again, it doesn't work for everybody, but it's just, you know, trying to like set yourself up for success. Especially because some of these queries get a lot of volume, and people are searching for that. Again, here's another one. Let's touch on what I mentioned before, but it's targeting events. So especially early on, you don't need like insane traffic. If you're in the B2B space, maybe you don't even need like a ton of customers, but there's industry events across the world all the time. So we were in Lisbon, and this guy in the back of the room raised his hand, and he's like, I run an accelerator. I don't think growth hacking works for me. And I was like, okay, that's cool, that's fine. But like, what are you looking for? What do you need? And he's like, I just need a handful of awesome startups to come work in my space. I was like, okay, well, that's like, you know, this whole venue is packed with the exact startups you're looking for. Just something like this. Why don't you advertise on the event hashtag? You know, here, you know, you're located in Amsterdam, but maybe you're trying to get over to the US, or maybe you're just trying to spread across all of Europe, and you can't afford to go to London or go to San Francisco, or, you know, maybe even travel within the Netherlands, or go down to Brussels to the event, or maybe you don't want to spend $1,000 or however much it costs to go to that industry event, but, you know, oftentimes people will follow these events on the hashtag. The event will even promote the hashtag, and so many times people don't even sponsor it. So again, instead of writing them like a $5,000 check to target to be one of the many, you know, logos on the site, go after the hashtag. Go after the handle of the event. Like for instance here, nobody was sponsoring, you know, LAIS 15, but a lot of people were following it. Here's another. So this one won't necessarily work right now, but it's just talking about whenever new paid channels come on board, I always jump on them and try to see where there could be some opportunities. So this is a friend of mine and Patrick's, Dimitri. He runs a company called SaneBox. It's a way to better manage your inbox. But there's so many tools. There's so many email tools out there. He's like, okay, how can I differentiate myself? Also, people aren't necessarily searching for what I'm providing, so I can't go into AdWords and try to get a lot of growth. And so Outbrain just came on board, and what they do is they serve, for instance, CNN. Even though in this instance I don't see how a modern guide to fragrance has to do with an email tool, but what they often do is they'll serve other content pieces that are related. And so again, it's kind of like Medium as a Message or The Authority. CNN is showing these related posts around the web, and through Outbrain, you can get your posts sponsored there, and you can actually drive them to your product page. But in this case, they were featured in Inc. So again, he's like this small startup. Nobody knows who the heck he is. So if he took people to his page, why should they listen to what he's saying? But in this example, Inc. is kind of vouching for him. And so he's able to use Outbrain to drive traffic to this Inc. article that featured him, which I'm sure the writer of Inc. was quite thrilled on that as well. And then take that all the way to his website and onboard people. And again, Outbrain isn't necessarily going to work for you today, but by finding these new channels and testing them, they were getting signups for pennies. And here, they were getting 100 product trials a day at their targeted cost per acquisition. Another cool tool is oftentimes, just like with content, you're like, what should I write about? It's, what ad should I create? And so here's a product called Moat. It's pretty cool. You can just go in there and type different brands, and they'll show you some examples. And so I'm not some professional designer, but I can go in there and I kind of see what is Coke trying? What is Google trying? What is Salesforce trying? And maybe look at what your competitors are doing and just get some inspiration or some ideas from them. Another place is SEMrush, which I mentioned before, which can be used for organic traffic. Does anybody in here use SEMrush? Cool, a couple of people. And so what I like with this too is you can kind of see what are your competitors bidding on? What do they find important with their product? And also you can, as you can see here, they have the ad block. You can actually see what are they using, how are they writing their ads? What's the value that they think that their product provides? You can kind of, I guess, somewhat tap into their inner psyche. Maybe their marketing team has no clue what they're doing, but you can still kind of, see what are they thinking. So again, here, let's say you're an Airbnb competitor, which in that case, good luck. But you can go, just type it in, and see what is the language that they're using. In this example, yeah. SEMrush. So SEMrush.com. And so they have some you can use part of it for free, part of it is paid, but it's actually been around for a long time. I've been using them for years. So here's another example. So again, I was launching this developerreports.com site. Nobody knew who I was, but I wanted to start getting developers. And I saw this site on Product Hunt and on Reddit and on Hacker News blowing up called GitHub Awards. It's actually run by this developer over in Paris. And he just put it up there. It's interesting what he did here from a content perspective. He was taking, he just basically tapped into the GitHub's API and he's providing some type of ranking. So he's basically appealing to the developer's vanity, which is often a nice way to get some lift, is tap into people's vanity. So anyway, so I saw this site was blowing up, and I'm like, okay, this is awesome. And then I noticed right here, like this product, support it by sending a tweet. I was like, okay, that's not going to do much. And he had no advertising, but I was like, he's probably just a solo developer. What if I offered to pay for his hosting and send him, 100 euros a month? Pay for a couple beers or something like that. So I reached out to him, kind of using the partnership email that Patrick showed earlier, and he gave the thumbs up. I got a link on this site that was blowing up on Reddit and Hacker News and whatnot on the homepage, and a link directly to my site. And so the reason I mention that is oftentimes, you're like, okay, how can we get distribution? Like maybe there's like a person in the accounting space that gets a ton of traffic. Maybe see that they're using AdSense. Was it one of you that used AdSense? Right. And so they're running these banner ads because they'd love to make some money. But I think there's so much opportunity for finding these kind of like niche sites and just reaching out to these people and say, hey, get rid of the AdSense, put my banner ad, put a link to my site instead, because you're providing them value. Like there's actually, your product might be very related to their audience, again, aligning the customers. And you pay them $100 or $250 or whatever the amount may be. But a lot of times you're like, gosh, I wish we were ranking for this keyword. There's this solo blogger that's like getting all this traffic that I'd like. Well, oftentimes, they didn't even know that there is like a sponsorship opportunity. And I think, reaching out to these people, there's a lot of, kind of low-hanging fruit there. With the Paleo Hacks example, again, I guess this is like kind of high risk. And I think Facebook kind of shut down some of this. But there's like lookalike audiences. Has anybody done lookalike audiences? Perfect. Work pretty well, or how did you think it worked?
Well, for us it worked pretty well. It was for a big telco until the big telco shut its own down because of privacy issues.
Okay.
I worked for that company. They were not so happy sharing email because they said Facebook somehow.
I see.
For us it worked very well because if you target exactly if people want to pay for sports channels.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. So lookalikes, I highly. What? Yeah, he said that it worked well, but the company he worked for, they were afraid of the privacy between, what Facebook would do with the data that they were providing. So oftentimes you need to provide your customers' email addresses, and they weren't feeling comfortable there, but he said that it worked quite well. And so lookalike audience is definitely something that I would tap into. In this case, the high-risk part is you can like scrape Facebook IDs or Twitter IDs from people that follow certain pages and try to inject that as like your lookalike audience. Again, I think Facebook shut this down, but I haven't tried this, but I think you can and do this for, Facebook did, right? Yeah, so Facebook shut it down. I think you can still do it with Twitter. Or connect it with your app, correct? Perfect. And so that's a good example. Again, people were seeing probably great returns. Did you guys were doing that? With your app. So you guys can continue to. Okay, perfect. But again, it's an example of kind of like the Wild West. People were abusing it, and Sheriff Zuckerberg and team came to town and like killed it. I think it's like trying to find these new paid opportunities, and I don't want to say abuse them early on, but try to find these arbitrage opportunities. And also with Facebook, you want to give the example? Okay, cool. So like with Facebook, for instance, does anybody here have a Facebook page that has a lot of followers? Okay. Have you had that for a while, or is it kind of recent? Okay. And so organically, how's it performed through the years, like organically?
We haven't really used it, so before it just went organically, basically. So we didn't really do any push for it or anything.
But was it able to drive traffic, or?
Well, the funny thing is, we assumed that our audience would be using Twitter more than Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
It turns out to be really false assumptions.
Mm-hmm.
But we never really paid attention to that, so I think we should be.
Okay.
Yeah, it is driving traffic, and it is converting to signups, etc. So, especially when you boost stuff.
Right. You got to post stuff. The reason I guess I asked is because so we had, as you can see here, you know, there were like 160,000 likes on Facebook, and we had a very, you know, our audience was very active on Facebook, and so we put some resources into creating this large Facebook community, and it was working great. You know, we'd post like a recipe or post, you know, some tips on, they call it like the caveman diet, on just exactly what the audience was looking for. And you know, we'd get like thousands of likes and people would click on it and drive a ton of traffic. But then again, Sheriff Zuckerberg and team came to town, and it's kind of similar to what Google's done with AdWords, and they basically, like, you know, stopped giving us any organic traffic. It was getting no love. Why? Because they want you to use their paid platform. And so this is kind of just like a funny example. So we're like, okay, like, we're giving people exactly what they want, but nobody's liking it, nobody's sharing it. And so, you know, one day Patrick and I are talking, and we're like, okay, what do these people want? How can we get some love? I want to, you know, it's Friday. I want to go home feeling good about myself. And so we had what we called this trump card, and it was Ryan Gosling. Anybody here? You guys know who Ryan Gosling is? Yeah. So basically, there's like this "Hey girl" meme, and we would just put up this picture of him, you know, probably like with his shirt off or something, being like, "Hey girl, like, I'll karate chop gluten in the throat for you." And people would share it all over the place. And again, you know, we'd probably have some gluten-related post, but there, you know, it's kind of tapping into like the inner psyche where, of course, we were providing value before and nobody would share it, but these people also kind of wanted to be on like this inside joke with each other. So again, is I guess going a bit further and you know, thinking like, what do these people actually want to share on these platforms? And then the last thing with paid, and again, this isn't like mind-blowing or sexy, but it works, and it's retargeting. And it's very simple to set up. You don't even need to start like spending money on it necessarily. If you're running Google Analytics, you can actually start creating remarketing segments immediately. You can create like a bucket for everybody who visits your site. You can start creating buckets that for people that do certain events. Maybe they sign up, but they don't activate, like you were asking before. And then start remarketing those people with specific messages. So again, we're in the hotel room. I'm wondering, I'm a big basketball fan. We're wondering what's going on. I was checking out some stuff with New Relic, so I go to ESPN to see what's, you know, the latest and greatest in the basketball world, and they follow me there. Then I go to Paleo, see, you know, what's going on with the community, and again, they follow me there. And again, it's not going to get you the crazy hockey stick growth, but it's kind of like a low-hanging fruit. You spend all this time and money and resources getting people to your site, and it's kind of like why I talked earlier with doing like the upsells. I'm sure many of you have seen, if you get somebody to give you money, it's often easier to get those same people to give you more money than to get somebody that's never given you anything before. So again, here, you spend all this time and money and energy getting people to your site, and so using something like remarketing to try to like bring them back into your funnel.
How much more effective would you say this is then?
It depends. It depends on obviously each situation, but I've just found both on getting the traffic and getting the traffic back to the site, and also the conversions are often much cheaper than just trying to get somebody from scratch or getting somebody, you know, from a new search query. Cool. Now growth hacks. We'll get Patrick up, but first, quick bathroom break and coffee. And if you have any questions, please let me know.